Is the son of a sword, gifts from the gods, with golden wings, into the light, golden king, justice, melanin cultivation, antibiotic theories, the righteous sun, solar raw, and different glow, raised for days from the heavens above, slow, same thing, the lowest depths of hell, 76 trillion cells. To confusion, 187,000 religions, 76 schisms and isms. Isn't it in your Bible that Jesus spoke in parables? The devil, walk with God, you can't run with the devil, walk with God, run with the devil. Peace, peace, peace. Back again with your host, Dr. Alim El-Bey. And you're listening to First World Order Radio. No doubt. Let me bring on my co-host before we get started. Brother Fahim, are you here? Yeah, I tell you, Washitaw Ish, how you doing tonight? Excellent, excellent. All right, we're going to get started. And of course, this particular broadcast is called African Americans or the Indigenous People of the Americas. All right. Brother Al, I know you got something to say about that already. Okay. 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 You want to expand on anything in which that you just stated in order to give the listeners something in order to even think further about? Mhm. Right. 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 Mm. Right. Okay. Well, we're gonna try to clear up as much of the information that we possibly can tonight, in our little bit of time, you know. So that's what we're gonna try to do, Brother L. All right. So um, I guess we're gonna start with the landmass of the ancient world. We're talking about over 200 to 250 million years ago, when all the land masses were together. There was only one continent. So there was no such thing as Europe, North America, South America, Africa, Antarctic, India, none of these, or even Australia. There was none of these existed at this time period 200 million years ago. All right. 250 million years ago. This is what is called the continental drift, when the tectonic plates of the planet land masses begin to shift and begin to break apart. Some say it was because of volcanic activity, or whatever the case is. We know that it broke apart. All right. And now allegedly we have 7 continents. The continents are those that begins with A and that ends with A. So you have the Americas, North, Central, South America, the Americans or Caribbean islands. You have Africa, which begins with an A, ends with an A. You have the Antarctica that begins with an A, ends with an A. You have Asia that begins with an A, ends with an A. Europe is not a continent. Okay, Europe is Asia Minor, which is part of Asia Major. Okay, so let's get that out the way. Now, Asia itself means body or land. Okay, when you look up the word Asia, that's what it means. Now, when you go to Hebrew, right, because you go to Hebrew, you find something very interesting. In Hebrew, the lowest world is called Asia, Assiah, Asia. And Asia means the world or the realm of the making. All right. So we all are here, or Asians or Asiatics. All right. You have us who are the Asiatics. You have the Caucasians or Caucasus Asians, and you have the Oriental Asians. All right. So we are all Asian because we are all here in the realm or the world of the making to make things. This is why 29 compartments are dedicated to your hands alone. All right. Now, in the Holy Quran, the 47th chapter, Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa. Okay, it breaks it down. The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family was second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, and the first true and divine name of Africa. Okay. The dividing of the land between the father and the son. All right, so the demarcation line of Amexem. All right, you know that at one time the capital of Ethiopia was Axum. All right, so this is what they're talking about right here, this particular time period. And then the domain of Kush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his family dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Land joined them. The Moabites from the land of Moab who received permission from the Pharaoh of Egypt to settle and inhabit Northwest Africa. They were the founders and are the first possessors of the present Moroccan Empire, which with their Canaanite, Hittites, and Amorite brethren who sojourned from the land of Canaan, seeking new homes. All right. Their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa across Great Atlantis onto the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands. So what is this Atlantis? The Atlantis land masses is what we refer to as specifically the East Coast, northern and southern, all right, portion of what we now refer to as the United States, as we refer to it as the North Gate or North of Maxim, right? Now, the Atlantic Islands or the Caribbean Islands, okay? And it says before the great earthquake, right? So volcanic activity, earthquakes is what is said to have caused the break. Now you got to imagine how severe that earthquake was to cause the seven continents that we now refer to, now that we have, which caused the great Atlantic Ocean. The river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaoh of Egypt in those days for trade. and it extended eastward, all right, from the River Nile westward across the Great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation. So that means that what this is telling you, that there was trade between the Americas and Africa all the time. According to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the holy land of Canaan. Now, as you notice, it says, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race. So notice that Prophet Noble Drew Ali in the Holy Quran Circle 7 did not say that we were not African. Okay. Now, Brother L, do me a favor. You know what I'm saying? When it comes time, recite for me that glorified hymn or song from the Marines. Okay, we're not there yet, but just hold on a second. Now, Dr. Khaled said it, all right, at the gathering of the masters. He said, we have people now that want to fight us, attack us. You mean you become so sick and degenerated until you will call yourself an Asiatic instead of an African? Well, I use African for communication. You know, we so stuck on them until we just can't stick, you know, we got stuck on stupid. We're not talking about a continent. We're talking about when the landmass, or what is called planet Earth, was different. What is that different that he's talking about? The difference that he's talking about is when all the landmasses were together. He said, you just want to claim a spot on the whole thing. Africa is not our home. Let that hang in the atmosphere for a while. I say, at this gathering of the masters, Africa is not our home. Africa, as it is called today, is our throne. And from our throne, we ruled our home, which is the 196,940,000 square miles of the planet Earth and the 76 quintillion miles throughout the sphere of light of the diameter of the universe. Now, this is what Dr. Khaled said. Now, many keep missing that point. And this is the same lecture where he said that I'm a Moor, and I got sense to know I'm a Moor. Okay? So understand what is going on. Now, we did say specifically that chapter 47 in the Holy Quran Circle 7 said Egypt, the capital empire of the Dominion of Africa. So when we come down and you read in Ancient Mysticism of Masonry, Freemasonry, by Charles Vale, he says this. He said, we are not indebted to either ancient Egypt for either religion or masonry, but to America. It is in fact that at Memphis, Egypt, in the pyramids under the guidance of the kings, the mystic rites of masonry, right? That's what's called mystic rites of masonry, by Charles Vale. It's something similar to that. Were worked many thousands of years ago. But at that time, Egypt and the continent of America were one and the same. All right? So when you go up here, and see, they're talking about over 200 million years ago. But of course, we're stuck on the 6,000-year-old biblical story. So we thinking, oh, that's too far back. The pyramids were just built 4,000 years ago. Adam and Eve just came 6,000 years ago because of a man by the name of James Ussher stated that it was 4004 BC, you know, which would have been 6,000 some odd years ago, that Adam and Eve were just created on the planet Earth. And all of us are descended from this mythological, allegorical Adam and Eve. So you are stuck on stupid. This is what Dr. Khaled was talking about. All right, because this is where our time frame or time reference begin at as scholars and so-called historians. Well, I'm gonna take you further back than that shit tonight. All right, so let's just get into it. All right, so in America, now this is what he says. In America, rediscovered in the 15th century and repopulated in the 17th century, was recovered Egyptian or Egypt. All right, we covered Egypt and the promised land, or the land of the constellation of the eagle. All right. Now, what does he mean by that? Well, you get the Arizona Gazette Friday evening, March 12, 1909 edition, and you get the April 5th, 1909, all right, of the Arizona, all right, that's the Phoenix Gazette, all right. So you got the Arizona Gazette and the Phoenix Gazette, and this one in the Phoenix Gazette says the Grand Canyon, mysteries of immense rich caverns being brought to light. Remarkable finds indicates ancient people migrated from the Orient. All right. In other words, they came from Egypt. Now, this was hidden by the Smithsonian and still is. All right. Get archaeological cover-ups by David Hatcher Childress. All right. Now, get that book. So Egypt was here in America, or in the Americas. The Egyptians came to the Grand Canyon around 1700 BC and even earlier. All right. Sometimes it'd be taking these dates off, but these zeros off these dates. This is proven by the fact that there are 18 temples in the Grand Canyon at the so my 18 temples of the Egyptians, of the ancient Kemites, or what is known as the ancient Tamarians. Right? During the time of the 18th dynastic period, Akhenaten is said to have come here. Right? The Amaru family, which is from Nefertiti and Akhenaten, Unten. All right. So Childress goes on and says, perhaps the most amazing suppression of all is the excavation in the Egyptian tomb by the Smithsonian itself in Arizona. A lengthy front page story of the Phoenix Gazette on April 5th, 1909, gave a highly detailed report on the discoveries, excavation of a rock-cut vault by an expedition led by Professor S.A. Jordan of the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian, however, claims to have absolutely no knowledge of the discovery or its discoverers. You see, they don't want you to know this. Now, the Empress, all right, Empress Verdiasi Tierra Washitaw Tournica Gaston El-Bey, all right, alayhi salam, may she rest in peace, rise in power. According to Earthways, the newsletter of the Sojourning Truth Farm School, August 1995, reprinted in the Freedom Press newsletter, spring 1996. Right? The Empress says this: the Washitaw was and still is a nation of Africans who existed in the southern United States and Mississippi Valley region long before the 16th century Europeans arrived, and even before there were Native Americans. All right. So if you're saying that we came from out of Africa, you would have to go back further than just 400 years for us to be here in the Americas. And this is what she's saying. Before the 16th century Europeans arrived, and even before there were Native Americans, that means you have to go back now, further back than 10,000 years ago. We was already here. And it says, on the lands the Washitaw once occupied and still occupied today. Indigenous people have been all over the world, and specifically on the North American continent for hundreds, thousands of years. Actually, there was some Washitaw here even before the Africans arrived, dated to when all the continents of the world were one. So even though we might have sprung out of what they now refer to as Africa, of course, you can't refer to it then as Africa, because all the landmasses were together. We spread it out through all of what now becomes the 7 so-called continents. It says their lands and the lands of all the earth was known by the indigenous term Mu. Mu, right? So, which also becomes what we now call Asia. All right. Now, these four, or the first Pan-Africanists and the first Afrocentrics or tricks, right? They're responsible for creating the out of Africa and hominid ape theories. Now, I don't have a problem with the out of Africa, but I do have a problem with the hominid ape theories, as I will show you in a minute. You know what I'm saying? Which was based on eugenics. Eugenics is one group of people controlling the evolutionary destiny of another group of people, or one group of people being made the least fit to survive by another group controlling all of the educational institutions of the world, which have the group controlling every land. Eugenics is how a global people become a African descent. Out of Africa, ape turning into humans, all life originating on one continent theory, are nowhere to be found in the ancient Mexico, Dogon, ancient Egyptian, Moorish Europe, nor in any indigenous tribe in Africa, America, India, Malaysia, and Australia. All right, so African-centered aspects come from white supremacy. This is just something to think about. I can't necessarily agree with everything based on the fact that when you get the book, Forbidden Archaeology, all right, the hidden history of the human race by Michael Creedmoor and Richard L. Thompson, in the book it says a groove sphere from the Pre-Cambrian South African miners have found hundreds, over 200, of metallic spheres well underground, at least one of which had 3 parallel grooves running around its equator. According to scientists, the spheres are found in photophilic rock, which is mined in West Transvaal, South Africa, which is 2.8 billion years old. The spheres are not natural objects and their origin is unknown. They obviously was created by intelligent beings. Of course they were, because who the hell was smelting metal 2.8 billion years ago? You know how much heat it takes to smelt metal? Okay. You're talking about over 800 to 1200 degrees, between 800 to 1200 degrees. Okay. Now, this is how these spheres looked. Now they call them the Clerk spheres, but these are the ones that date back to 2.8 billion years old, right? In which that you can read about. So this is much further back than 200 million years ago. All right, when the continents were together. That means 2.8 billion years ago, this is definitely when all the continents were together. And someone was smelting metal in South Africa. All right? I know you be watching those alien shows, so of course it's the alien beings. And this is not to make light of that, because we are extraterrestrial or extraterrestrial energy. But this is for you to understand that it was you, your ancestry, right? Scientific American magazine, dating back to June 5th, 1852 issue, a metallic vase from pre-Cambrian rock. And it says that it contained a report about blasting carried out at Meeting Hill Rock in Dorchester, Massachusetts. The blast disgorged tons of rock described by the United States Geological Survey as pudding stone, over 600 million years old. A bell-shaped metallic vessel was blown out of the rock that was about 4 inches high with exquisite carving, indicating the presence of artistic metal workers over 600 million years ago. And that was right here in what we now refer to as the United States. in North America, north of Mexico, North Gate. So there was someone here. So we had someone in Africa 2.8 billion years ago smelting metal, and we have someone here 600 million years ago smelting metal. This is how the vessel looks. Oz looks. Get the book, The Hidden History of the Human Race, Michael Creedmoor and Richard L. Thompson. This is the condensed edition of the Forbidden Archaeology. Big books with little pictures, people are turned off by that. So they condensed it and maybe put a little bit more pictures up in there, because people need pictures. Humans have been walking the earth for hundreds of millions of years. This is what it says. The hidden history of the human race. It says, this is the points that Michael Creedmoor and Richard L. Thompson points out. Over the past 200 years, the scientific establishment has selectively ignored, suppressed, and forgotten some remarkable artifacts and bones that contradicts the dominant view of human origin and iniquity. Evolutionary prejudices have served as a sort of informational filtering system that has left us with a radically incomplete set of facts for building our ideas about human origins. The hidden history of the human race is a call for change in today's arbitrarily rigid mindset, deploying an unexpectedly great number of convincing facts, as some of the ones I just showed you. Most compelling to me, because no archaeologist or anthropologist will touch the subject. Deeply illuminated with critical analysis, readers will find themselves compelled to rethink our understanding of human origin, identity, and destiny. Right? This is what we're trying to do here today. We're trying to get you to rethink your understanding, understanding of human origin, identity, and destiny. All right? Some of you might be upset about that. Too bad. We're going to keep teaching the truth, no matter what you say, no matter the trolls that get on YouTube to make comments. If you want to do something, go and do your own channel and come up with your own facts. It's not hard. All you need is a Gmail account. It's not hard. Okay? And stay your monkey asses. If you want to say that you come from a monkey, stay your monkey asses from off of my timeline and off of my channel. That's how simple that is. Here are some examples. Antelope Springs, Utah. A prince of man wearing shoes, in which that the left shoe has tried it on a trilobite, a creature of 440 million years ago. St. Louis, Missouri. Footprints in Permian rock, 200 million years ago. Now, this is when the continents began to start breaking apart. But the one in Utah, shoes dated back to 440 million years ago. That was 200 million years before the continental drift occurred, and we was wearing shoes. Uh-oh. Somebody gonna have to deal with that. I'm glad it's not me. Berea, Kentucky. Footprint in Pennsylvania rock, 200 million years ago. Pershing County, Nevada. A shoe print showing evidence of a well-cut and double-stitched leather sole in Triassic limestone. 160 to 195 million years old. Glen Rose, Texas. Footprint in Cretaceous rock, 70 million years old. Fisher Canyon, Nevada. A shoe print with clear traces of strong threads in a coal seam, 12 million years old. See? And guess what? All of these times that I'm talking about, all the ones that's above 70 million, this is all before the ape species. The ape species didn't exist 70 million years ago. The ape species is no older than 20 million. And the monkey species is only 60 million. So now they have to change that, oh no, man didn't evolve from the monkey or from the ape. They had a common ancestor. Well, that wasn't what you said when you was teaching us this shit in biology class. When I was in school, you told us that we came from the monkey. That's what you told us. That we came from the monkey. Yeah, didn't they tell you that, Brother L? Yeah, they didn't tell you that we came from a common ancestry. That's not what they said. They said that that we evolved from the monkey. And they show you the monkey, the ape, and then they show you the various so-called monkey men in between, or ape men in between, don't they? And then they show you the Homo sapien. So they show you the Australopithecus, the Africanopithecus, and they show you the Homo habilis. They show you the Homo erectus. Then they show you the Homo sapien. Then they show you the Homo sapien. You know that's what they show you, Brother L. They show you all of this, right? You know, but now we coming with information that shows us wearing shoes 440 million years ago, and we smelting metal 600 million years ago in the Americas, and in Africa 2.8 billion years ago. Their whole thing becomes flawed. Somebody's lying. Somebody is lying. And this destroys the whole damn Charles Darwin theory. But that's all it ever was a theory. The shit has never been a fact because they have never found the so-called missing link. And never will. And if they do, they'll make that shit up. Like they claimed that they did when they went to the moon. Okay? Go get the book, Gods and Spacemen in the Ancient West. So they bear witness to the fact that you are the gods and are the spacemen. And where was you at? In the ancient West. Raymond Drake he states that the Pygmies, who are the Twa or Anu people, inhabited Earth for 30 million years. So for at least 30 million years, we already was here on the planet. So guess what? That's still 10 million years before the ape species. So if there was a missing link, then it must be the Pygmies. They are new people. If there's a missing link, because there was 10 million years before the ape species. Oh, snap. I think I just found the missing link, Brother Al. Uh-oh. No, I think we just found it. Because the Pygmies is the term used for various ethnic groups worldwide whose average height is usually low. Anthropologists define Pygmies as any group whose adult male or men grow less than 150 centimeters, 4 feet and 11 inches in average height. A member of a slightly taller group is termed Pigoid. All right. It says basically the best known Pygmies are the Aka, the Ifa, the Mbuti of Central Africa. There are other Pygmies in Australia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Brazil, and this also includes the Negritos of Southeast Asia, right? The remains of at least 25 miniature humans who live between 1,000 to 3,000 years ago was found on the island of Palau in Micronesia. Now let's look at that. Let's look at that for a second. All right. That means that the Pygmies existed all over the planet. You're talking about Central Africa, Australia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Brazil, Southeast Asia, and Micronesia, as well as here in the Americas. Right? In the book, Congo Katabo by Jean-Pierre Haile. He states that the Twa people, or the Pygmies of Zaire, are the world's most genetically pure ethnic group. Now, if you look at the Pygmies, in which that they say that everyone on planet Earth evolved from was the Pygmies, right? We all came from the Pygmies, right? That's all the various hues, all right? That's the so-called black man, brown man, red man, yellow man, white man, right? We all supposedly comes from the Pygmies, right? And it says that there's and it's surviving since the dawn of humanity in real harmony with God, nature, and with each other. It says the Pygmies, or the Twa, or Pata, or Tahites, or what is known as the Anu people, bones and the descendants have been found all over the earth. In West Kush, which is Ethiopia, Kemet, Egypt, Canaan, Sumer, Babylon, East, which is called East Kush, Indo Kush, which is called Harappa, which is the pre-Davidians of ancient Egypt, who was also known as the Tamil, right? And you have the Jarara people right off of out of India. All right, this is who they're talking about. You have the in China, the Shang Li dynasty, which is the first dynasty, who built the pyramids in the Xi'an province. All right, and you have the Australians, the Tasmanian Aborigines, and the other Aborigines. So the Twa people have been all over the planet. And remember, Raymond Drake just said they've been here at least 30 million years. I just showed you that in the other books, we talking about they was already in the Americas 600 million years ago. All right, in what is called the hidden history of the human race. In Forbidden Archaeology, we showed you that they was already in Africa 2.8 billion years ago. And they were smelting metal at these time periods. Okay, the Twa people are the only people that was on the planet Earth at this particular time. All right, the migration of the Twa to all parts of the world within the past 300,000 years or more occurred before other races existed as we know them today. All right. African Homo sapiens therefore has gone through many periods of cultural development and civilization before the beginning of the Moria, which is a misnomer, but civilization of 90,000 BCE, Atlantis, which is 70,000 BCE, the Nile Valley civilization, which is 50,000 BCE, and the Zen civilization of Southwest Sahara, which is also called the Ma Confederation, which dates back to 15,000 BCE, and the building of the Sphinx, which dates back to 10,500 BCE, right? So we were the original Australians, the original Asians, the original people of so-called Latin descent, who are called the Taino, who actually was the Arawak and the Carib, right? We were the original Filipinos. We were the original Indians. We were the original people of India, all right? The Jarawa people, right? This is all us. This is what Dr. Khaled meant by you want to claim a spot or the whole thing. Okay, Africa is not our home. Africa is our throne. And from our throne, we rule the whole 196,400 square miles of the planet Earth. This is what he was talking about. Here, we talking about the Twa people being on the planet at least 30 million years. And here it is, right in the basement of the museum. We had 28 million year old human skeleton in the British Museum. Excuse the typo. It's in the British Museum. And guess where they found this skeleton at? Human skeleton now, 28 million years, not 2.8, not Dagnesh, you know, which they keep saying is the oldest human that died out just like the rest of these ape species that they keep finding. They keep talking about, oh, this must be the missing link, and never find it. But this one came from the Caribbean islands of Guadeloupe, of Guadalupe, showing again that the Pygmies or the Twa people or Pata or Hites or known as the Anu people spread it out. And then I just stayed in Central Africa, as they are said to be there now, near the Congo and near Tanzania and Uganda. They spread it out into the whole world. Why? Because the continents at the time when they first was on the planet, what we know is at least 2.8 billion years ago, all the continents and landmasses were together, what is now called Pangea in your geography class. Albert Churchward, Signs and Symbols of Primordial Man, states that the Twa, all right, he called the Mistonies, are the original and the oldest living people on the face of the planet Earth. The now Negroes were probably one of the first of the en route race, the race that was the first and oldest race of men after the Pygmies. He's talking about the Cushites, the now Negroes with the Cushites, all right? And this is who we asked who was ruling Egypt at the time, who was the Twa people. You know them as the best people, BES. This is why if you go to Egypt, you will find there are chambers in which that you, as being 6 feet tall or so, you would have to get down damn near on your knees to crawl through. All right, this is a fact. Of course, you won't notice if you have never been, you know, if you have never traveled. And this is the problem with a lot of our people. They want to make comments when they have never gone anywhere. But as Brother said, he said, around the corner. Okay, that's what it is. All right, so you find out also that the ancient Tamarian or the Egyptians called the Taseti or Tasu spoke of the Twa people, who are the best people, as the small brown men who were the earliest inhabitants on Earth. You see? So this is the missing link that they keep trying to, you know, that they keep talking about. But they keep trying to give you the missing link of a monkey or ape species of some type. Right? Originally, this was not the case. Okay. Now, of course, I can't speak about things after this because there were some experimentations in which that took place. Some genetic tampering that took place. These things did occur. You know, Dr. Monroe Island type of shit took place. We won't get into that. Right? Go and do your research. Right? The Message to the Black Man by Honorable Elijah Muhammad will help you understand some of that experiments of Yaqub. Right? Get the book by Walter Scott, Hermetica, where it states that the worst thing, the Egyptians said the worst thing that we've ever done was create man in our image and after our likeness. So there was some tampering done genetically before the Europeans even was on the planet. Matter of fact, the Europeans was part of that process. All right? Right here, I've read the James Churchward book on Mu. I said, and Walter, that on the traditional academic level are the books edited by Ivan von Sertima, all right, Rutgers University in New Jersey. His books, African Presence in Early America and African Presence in Early Asia, are filled with articles and photos that shows without a doubt that the Negroes have lived literally all over the world, including the ancient Americas. So this is hundreds, thousands, millions of years before the European even was on the planet. So why do you allow for him to keep dictating to you who you are? I will not allow that any longer. We have now we now find that it's necessary to define ourselves, redefine ourselves. And if you want to keep staying within the box that you just came from an ape and you just came here 400 years ago, then that's you. I'm sorry that you have that mentality. I'm sorry that you believe them in your history and sociology, in your social science class, in your sociology class, if you went to college, or your anthropology class, if you went to college. I don't. The theories are flawed. Everything that I just told you coincide much better than anything that they ever told you in school. You have to admit that. If you don't, then once again, that means that you must be happy coming from an ape. And I guess, you can go do your Oonga Boonga calls and go and, swing from vines like Tarzan and shit, if that's what you choose to do. You see what I'm saying, brother? Because this is the ridiculous. Yeah, because this is ridiculous. That we have to keep doing these type of shows because people are so busy trying to attempt to prove someone wrong, but yet they don't never deal with the facts of what comes from these books talking about they pseudoscience. How is it pseudoscience? When the science community, anthropology and archaeologists has never proven anything that we have stated, nor what Michael Creedmoor have stated, nor what Richard L. Thompson have stated as being wrong and incorrect. But you attempt to try to debate and try to tell me our legacy is from the Australopithecus and the Homo habilis and the erectus, and even calling the Twa people Homo erectus, and saying that they are part of the Homo erectus. This is what they try to say in science, that they're part of the Homo erectus, right? So if that's the case, then that means that you must have found the missing link if they are the Homo erectus. Because that's what you claim that was right before the Homo sapien. Then, of course, you claim it was Homo sapiens sapien now. Anyway, Australoids, Negroids, and Negroes. A suggested explanation for their disjunct distributions by David D. Labenfeld. All right, this is what he says. Australoids, Negroids, Negritos, and Negroids display perplexed disjunct distribution from which there is no historical explanation. It is when you go into what I just made the mention of, it is perfect explanation, as I just made mention of. Because the Twa people was there in Australia. The Twa people was in Africa. They was in Asia, which means Europe also. They was in the Americas. They were spread out throughout the whole world, right? So while they are saying in this article from the Syracuse University in New York, all right, they don't know or don't have an explanation. Well, we do. Australoids and Negroids alternate with one another in areas from Africa to Australia, but maintain their racial distinctions throughout. A careful examination of this distribution, plus examination of their culture, shows a striking ecological correlations with Negroids always in the rainforest and Australoids clinging to the open country. Two populations of the so-called full-size Negroes, Africans and Oceanic, are physically very similar, but are unrevocably distinct in origin. Mixture is strongly indicates in their origin, one element clearly being Negroid. It is suggested that there are physical and geographic reasons for the other element being of early Caucasoid, which is they call it the Cro-Magnon, which I'm sorry, but the Cro-Magnon was not Caucasoids. The Cro-Magnon, which is also the Grimaldi man, both were Negroid types. So see, this is where they are trying to add themselves into the mix, in which that you can go and read clearly that the Europeans in their present form dates no further back than 8,000 years ago. In fact, they say 6,000 years ago. So this correlates with what Noble Drew Ali, with what Clarence 13X, and what Honorable Elijah Muhammad received from Master Farah Muhammad, that the European dates no further back than 6,000 years. Okay, that's just what it is. That's the truth of the matter. So, in order to even go further and understand even more, go to the hidden life in Freemasonry. Because see, they know about this in Freemasonry. This is Charles W. Ledbetter, 33 Degrees. He states that the Pygmies race is the relic of the old Lemurians and represent them more purely than any other people. The Lemurians were at one time a gigantic people, but in the process of dying out, they diminished in size. The African Bushmen are also remnants of the same race, but with very mixed blood, and the same thing is true of those who are usually called the Australian Aboriginals, except that in their case, there is a very admixture of Aryan blood. And that was not until much later, right? Because the original Aboriginals of Australia was there in Australia over 50,000 years ago, which means that if the European just came upon planet Earth 6,000 years ago, and then according to Elijah Muhammad, they was in the Caucasus Mountains for at least 2,000 years. And so that means they only been released for 4,000 years to run chaos and havoc upon the planet. That means that we're looking at a 50,000-year-old civilization in Australia by the Aborigines, all right, who came from out of Africa, all right, in which that we're talking about 44,000 years before the European even came on the planet. They was already there. So that later light admixture didn't take place until recently, when they began to go in and start colonizing, just like they did us here in the Americas. So at one time, the Pygmies were spread over a great deal more of Africa than at present. And some of them were the first people to enter Egypt, right? So this is where you get the best statues from, because they were Egyptians. The so-called Twa and Nu people were the Egyptians, all right? And also, as you notice, they was the Lemurians. Well, the Lemurians actually are the Hawaiians, as we now refer to them as. And here's a picture of Kamehameha First, the great king, 1758, May 8th, 1819, who unified the Hawaiian Islands and formally established the Kingdom of Hawaii. Now it's called the Sovereign Kingdom of Hawaii, all right? And did that in 1810. And then here you have Hawaii's last queen, Liliu Kalani, 1893. And they are the remnant people of the Lemurians. They are descendants of people. Okay, they are descendants of the Twa people. All right, get the book Lost Cities of Ancient Lemuria and the Pacific by David Hatcher Childress. He states that Hawaii, the Fiji Islands, Easter Island, and some of the Los Angeles areas are the last remnants of the Lemurian Empire. Right, this is we get Kali, right, or Khalifa, which is where they claim that the name California is derived from. And it says the Lemurian descendants are said to be primarily the people of the South Seas and Oceania. In Hawaii, there is one island where only pure-blooded ones have full Africoid features, skin, and woolly hair. Right, now, this is what David Childress say. Okay? Descendants of the Twa people, the Pygmies, misnomer, all right? The Tahites or Putites, this is them, all right? This is their descendants. You are their descendants. So here you get the book, by Churchward, James Churchward, who's the brother of Albert Churchward, the children of Mu. He shows you the geographical position of Mu, where the sacred of inspired books were written dating back to 70,000 BC. All right? 70,000 BC is still, but now that would be 72,000, all right? 72,000 years ago. So we still looking at, if the European is only on the planet 6,000 years ago in the present form that he's in, then we talking about really 66, all right? 66,000 years before the Europeans was even on the planet, that we was already in these areas. All right, once again, just proving facts, right? And so the phenotypes, you know, which that you now see of the various so-called blacks in these areas throughout the world, you know, came about because of them being in those areas over time and mixing in with each other, you know, families over and over again until they develop characteristics, facial characteristics, body types, phenotypes, et cetera, over time. All right. This is how this occurs. Get the book 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro by J. Rogers. He states the people of the Negro descent living in Asia, this is why we call it Asiatics, and Oceania probably exceeded in the numbers that present the present Negro population of Africa. The purest Negro types are in Southern Asia. This is what was in the book. All right. This is why we are called Asiatics. Of course, not only did our ancestry came from Africa, which most say 400 years ago, which was about 450,000 that came to North America specifically, 5 million to Brazil and South America, and then of course millions to the adjoining islands. Okay, so or thousands, you know, millions, less than, you know, we talk about, we can say that, you know, less than, yeah, we can say about millions or so came to the adjoining islands or the Caribbeans. But the fact is that we was already in these areas, not only in the eastern islands, known as the Caribbean or Americana, but we was also in the what is known as the western islands, known as Oceania, right, and known as Hawaii, Easter Island. All of these places that we just talked about here within the lost cities in ancient Lemuria and the Pacific, what is known as the Pacific Islands. So we was in the Atlantic Islands and the Pacific Islands, as well as here in the mainland of America, as well as in Africa, as well as in Asia, as well as in what they now refer to as Europe, which is Asia Minor. You was taught at least that much in high school. Right, so we have the Washitaw Nation of Moors, which I am Washitaw. In fact, historical synopsis. It says Peru, Mexico, Isabella, now Cuba or Cuba. It says United States, Canada, and Alaska are European inventions, which comprise the land of the cultured Moors, all right, which are the Saga Moors, the descendants from the ancient Amaru nations. The Amaru Washitaw Moors, the fathers of the civilization, began on the great island empire of Mu, Lemuria. All right, when about 8,000 years ago, a natural catastrophe overwhelmed that ancient motherland, some of its survivors made their way to what has since become known as North, Central, and South America. Okay? So you get the book of the dead and you check out the origin of the name Washitaw, you find out that it's an Egyptian name, Kemetic, Temerian name, hence Tamorian or Tamors or Sagamores, as it becomes known as. And what we have done is try to connect the dots here. So in the Book of the Dead, it has the hieroglyphic transcript of the Papyrus of Ani, the translation into English, and the introduction by E.A. Wallace Budge, the late keeper of the Egyptian and Assyrian antiquity in the British Museum. Now, you have here Usheta, or Ushet, right? Ushet, which was a form of Het-Heru, or Hathor, which becomes the biblical Hagar, who was the wife of Abraham, right? And was identified, and of course, even Hagar in the Bible was said to have been an Egyptian, which you talk about Hathor, all right, or Het-Heru, which means the eye of Heru, the eye of light. And so when you read in Matthew, the 6th chapter, what's that, 22nd chapter, the 6th verse, or 6th chapter, the 22nd verse, I believe it says that that when your eye is single, your whole body will be filled with light. That eye, when it be single, is talking about Heru or Hathor. And it was identified with the appearance of the sky in the north when the sun rose, right? So when the Kundalini energy, which is called the serpentine fire, rose to the eye, it becomes known as Washita or Ushita or Ushet or Washit or Wichita, right? She is either depicted in the form of a woman having upon her head the crown of the north, and scepter round with a serpent is twined, or a winged Uraeus, all right, wearing the crown of the north. She was the principal goddess of the town of Buto, all right, in the Delta. Now, right, this is what we're talking about here, right? It says the goddess Ushet, serpent head, right? The goddess, serpent head, all right? That's what we're talking about. So that's the real meaning of Washitaw. And remember, we showed you that the Washitaw, or the ancient Egyptians, were already here, right? Was already here, right? The emperor says over 100,000 years ago, before the Africans came and before there was Native Americans, as they refer to themselves, or the red man, as some refer to them as. But we know if we get a red penny or we get the various copper colored pennies, then that includes majority of our ancestry, which is right here as far as our complexion. All right. So James Churchward, in the book Children of the Moon, he claims that there was 64 million people who died in the sinking. Pacific Islands, Hawaii, or the remnant mountain peaks of the lost continent. Now, precise detailed maps of the lost continent of Mu and Atlantis was found on stone tablets from pre-Inca civilization. Who was here before the Incas? Oh, the Olmecs. Okay. The Olmecs date back to more than 5,000 years ago, right here in the so-called Western Hemisphere. In Peru, by Dr. Gerval Cabrera. And it says engulfed, right? In a stone, engraved in a stone, or photographed by Robert Charot. In 1972, the United Nations diplomat, Farida, all right, Ishkovek, who was the assistant to the United Nations President Adam Malik, went to Maui, which is Mu, all right? Of course, Maui is the capital of Hawaii, but that was Mu. And it says Hawaii, and researched the Lemurian, all right, ruins and history, and concluded that they were real. So when we keep hearing about Lemuria and Atlantis, this was real. The Caribbean islands were Atlantis, and Hawaii, the Hawaiian Islands, was what we now refer to as Lemuria. This is what we see right here, Mu. And as you see, it encompasses Easter Island, Tahiti, all right? The Samoa Islands, Fiji, Tonga, all right? Hawaii, the Caroline, Gilbert, all of that, all right, was once Mu or Lemuria. And the United Nations says that it was real. So I don't really care about you so-called, one book time reading Negroes. Okay? We talking about these are scholars. Right? These are historians who've actually gone out. These are anthropologists and archaeologists in this particular regard coming from the United Nations. All right? So some things I can get with because it makes sense, and other things you have to pick through because it just doesn't make sense. Prior to the catastrophe or the cataclysms of the 1500 BC, all right, the civilization of our ancestors will flourish in and from the Americas to Egypt, was known as Atlantis or the Atlantean Empire. After the cataclysm of 1500 BC, this disrupted Atlantean Empire was later reunited under the Moorish Empire, which at various times and to various degrees covered almost the same extent of territory. At the height of the Moorish Empire, there was Moorish dominions in West Africa, North Africa, the Mediterranean, Spain, Portugal, southern France, England, Ireland, Scotland, the Americas, from Alaska to Peru. There was also Moorish dominions and rulers in Asia, in India, Asia, and the Pacific. Right now, Brother L, I need for you to do the Marine song for me. Exactly. You know, that's good. That's good right there. So from the halls of Montezuma, which is the Inca, which was here in the Americas, right, to where the shores of Tripoli. Where's Tripoli? Tripoli is the capital of Libya, Africa. Okay, that was part of the Moorish dominion of the Moorish Empire. They told you this. This is why they was able to go in Libya and remove Gaddafi. Okay, so Brother Hakeem Bey goes further. He says people are all over the world. Some report that it was as a flood, Noah, Bible. Some as earthquakes, Atlantis. Others as volcanic eruptions, Terra. All of these were all various local descriptions of a series of worldwide cataclysmic events. As a result of the various cataclysms, there was a vast destruction of land and mass migrations of people in search of new homes. Right? This is what he was talking about. All right, so we find that we are the original people of Atlantis, of Lemuria, of Australia, of Asia, of Africa, of the Americas. It's hard to believe? Well, let's go to the United Nations definition. Indigenous, those people having a historical continuity with the pre-invasion and the pre-colonial societies considered themselves distinct from other sectors of the societies now prevailing in those territories or parts of them. They form at present non-dominant sector of society and are determined to preserve, develop, and transmit to future generations their ancestral territories and their ethnic identity as the basics of their continued existence as a people in accordance with their own cultural patterns, social institutions, and legal systems. Are you indigenous? Well, I don't know. The United Nations give you the definition of indigenous, and one of their drafts, which was approved in September the 18th, 1995, is called the Inter-American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And they define indigenous people. One, in this declaration, indigenous people are those who embody historical continuity with societies which existed prior to the conquest and settlement of their territories by Europeans. So before 400 years ago, You were the indigenous people here. Oh, check this out now. Alternative one, as well as people brought involuntarily to the New World who freed themselves and re-established the culture from which they have been torn. Damn, that's even include those who was brought here 400 years ago from Africa. So even if you came from Africa 400 years ago, and or either you have ancestry who was already here over 400 years ago, regardless, you are part of the indigenous people according to the United Nations definition of indigenous people. What's the criteria? Oh, here it is too. Self-identification as indigenous or tribal shall be regarded as a fundamental criteria for determining the groups to which the provision of this declaration applies. Wow. So you're supposed to self-identify yourself as being indigenous. Can you do that? Of course you can. You must have self-determination. You must want to be self-autonomous, self-governed. You have to do this. Self-identification as indigenous or tribal shall be regarded as a fundamental criteria for determining a group to which the provision of this declaration applies. This declaration applies to those who are indigenous and who have determined that they have indigenous heritage, whether here or whether it was those who came here 400 years ago. It doesn't matter. So all this bickering about, Black power, I'm African, and those saying that, I'm indigenous Aboriginal, or I'm a Moor, like you sound like jackasses with all this disqualification. And the European is sitting back saying, look at these jackasses once again. Look at them. Always down trying to debate something when the shit has already been solved. Right? So, right, already been solved. So we as at the United Nations, the Washitaw has the IPO or seat number 215/93, which means 1993. And we have the IPO, which is the Indigenous Peoples Organizational number 2421 at the United Nations. And so as you come down, because some people say, the United, we can't find information on the Washitaw at the United Nations. Well, it's on their website. You go to United Nations or UN.org, you will find it. I got at least 23 different citations. Okay. But it says here, Washitaw, deduct the money, new Ayet, oldest indigenous people on the earth. That's in the report. Now, of course, this report is no longer there because they don't want you to know this. After we started publishing this information, and once again, we've been doing this. We just didn't start last year. All right. You have some individuals, who just started, coming out and, excel pretty far, as far as clicks and likes on their channels. And that's fine. However, a lot of this information was already out. It was either Brother Hakeem H.Y. Bey, myself, or Brother Bobby, who put this information out over 20 some odd years ago about us being the indigenous people here. Okay? So this isn't just us coming up with something in 2000. This is something in which that we've been talking about since the early to mid 1990s. And I remember I was 11 years old. And I remember, I guess one of my ancestors or an internal voice, intellect, gent, intelligence spoke to me and said, what if we was already here? And I was 11 years old. And at that time, I was doing heavy meditations because I was doing yoga. I started yoga at 9. So I had the ancestors talking to me all the time in that regard, through my dreams, and then through hearing the voices and telling me, you know, what was going on. And so, and I'm not talking about like a crazy person. I'm talking about information. I'm talking about real information. I ain't talking about, you know, go digging in some garbage can type of shit. I'm talking about real channeled information, right? And so the voice said, what if you was already here? Because I was thinking about, at the time, the Alex Haley story, Roots, and, you know, and slavery, and, lynching, them castrating us, and so forth and so on. All right. So, this is how I got into it, because we talking about the ancestors talking to me, and telling me what was going on. So this is something which that we just came up with. This is something which that has validity, as you see here, as we going over tonight. So it says the obscure mound builders were indigenous blacks of North America, ancestors of America's Washitaw Empire. Okay, that's what it says. And let's go further. It says, though so many have been deliberately destroyed, over 200,000 ancient pyramids and huge mounds of the earth in the shape of cones, animals, and geometric designs can still be found from the southern coast of America to Canada. These structures were built by the so-called obscure people, largely known as the mound builders. Right? The truth about mound builders is suppressed. Why? Because they were an advanced civilization of dark-skinned, woolly-haired blacks who were indigenous, native to North America, kin to the Olmecs of South America. At one time, the Africans and the American continents were joined, as proven by their similarities of tropical plants and animals, geographical traits, and their appearance of fitting together. And if you want to go further, in Alabama and Florida, which you can look at, find the article on Google this, you will find that portions of Africa still exist attached to Alabama and Florida to this very day. The black mound builders were the Washitaw Moors, the original inhabitants of North and South America. Many blacks in North America was unknowingly descendants of these mound building indigenous blacks and are not descendants of black African slaves. Therefore, Columbus were not entirely wrong in calling the people Indians, for the true meaning of Indian is black person. The massive remains of this ancient black civilization empire stands as one of the best kept archaeological secrets in the country. Ancient American Magazine, issue number 17, reports evidence for black-skinned natives in the Americas long before the arrival of Columbus is abundant. From the Negroid features of Colossus Olmec sculptured heads and the pre-Aztec obsidian bowls being held by a figure with unmistakably black characteristics, right, to the bones of Negroid persons excavated from a 2,000-year-old mound in northern Wisconsin, a wealth of material exists to establish the certainty of non-white, non-Indian population living in a pre-Columbian America along with these other groups. Right? Many mound builders was huge. Their ancestral skulls was often 7 to 8 feet. The only other living person on the earth that tall, or another group of blacks, the Maasai of Africa. In his book, We Are the Washitaw, website by Dr. Umar S. Bey, himself a Washitaw Moor and authority on the Washitaw mound builders, documents that the black mound builders, he also documents the present day Washitaw Nation in Louisiana, all right? That's what he says. So this is what we're talking about. All right. And recently recognized by the United Nations and the Empress of the Washitaw, Verdiasi Tierra, Washitaw Tunica Gaston El-Bey. All right. So that's what we're talking about here. And you have to pay attention to these types of things. All right. Now, this area called the Louisiana Purchase never was purchased. Never was. That's just what it is. Oh, okay. Okay. Can you see it now? Can you see the slides now? You still can't see it? Okay. Let me nah. That was the last slide. Okay. Let me try it. Hold on, y'all. We having technical difficulties. We gotta make sure we get everything right here. Can you see it now? All right, well, we're just going to continue on. What you see? Okay, word. All right. All right, so let's come on down for what we were just talking about. And here is the Lewis and Clark. It says on 2,500 voted by dollars voted by Congress made in 1804, 1806 journey to the Pacific that revealed the West dazzling promise. This print of the explorers meeting with Indians came from an 1810 account, right, of the trek. Now, of course, we can't, nothing we can do about the ambulances and fire trucks and stuff going by here. So just bear with us as we get through. Right, Louisiana Purchase in 1803 nearly doubled the nation's size. Bought from France for $15 million, 2.5 cents an acre, on Jefferson's initiative. It won Congress approval after debates over whether the Constitution was violated. Now, this never happened. They never received, Napoleon or France never received the total $15 million in gold. Right? More than 13 million. Actually, yeah, they paid 13 million out and 2 million in gold was sunk beneath the ocean floor, something like that. And as a matter of fact, the Empress make mention of it in the article, Inner City Plow. Right? It says, Louisiana continuing her quest to bring light to the truth to light. Empress Verdiasi Tierra, Washitaw Tunica Gaston El-Bey recalled the 40 years of work, including research as an archivist in order to locate documents and treaties concerning land known as the Louisiana Purchase, in which her people are identified as the ancient ones. The Empress said that their land was never included in any land deal, and that it was not part of the Louisiana Purchase, which sold to Spain, to France, nor was it bought in 1803 when France rolled it over to the United States of America. She writes, President Thomas Jefferson was well aware of this fraud, all right, of this fraudulent land deal, and stated, his sentiments at the time. In truth, the land spoken of here never been a part of the United States of America. It has always belonged to the ancient ones. This sounds like the same land President Abraham Lincoln was going to return to the Moors after slavery. He called it, all right, he called it Egypt of the West, or the Central America, the land between the Rocky and the Allegheny Mountains, from the Gulf of Mexico up into Canada on both sides of the Mississippi. And her cousin, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, said the same thing, that before the Europeans came, we lived all up and down the Mississippi. So in 1848, the Washitaw, also Washitaw and Tunica nations, this is why we are the Royal House of Tunica, nations took their land case before the United States court and won their case under Judge Taney. The same in 1856 gave his opinion, which was not a legal decision, in the tragic Dred Scott case, which basically stated that there's nothing that a black man has that a white man is bound to respect. The result of this opinion meant further slavery and death to Tunica and other nations. They were murdered by the tens of thousands enslaved and ran off their lands. 10 of their names were changed to hide the truth of their history. The Washitaw became Washington and Tunica became Turner. All right? This is just what is taking place. So you find out that Louisiana proper, the so-called Louisiana Purchase, consisted of what states? Well, that's Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Minnesota, Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, all right, and also portions of Texas, Alabama, Utah, New Mexico, and portions of even the so-called 13 colonies, or the so-called original 13 states, on up into almost the whole of Canada and Florida. All right, so we're talking about over 30 million acres. All right, really over 30 million acres. Right, here's a better picture of it. I got this from an 8th grade social science book. And it shows you the Louisiana Purchase. Actually, this one is not as full as this one is, as you see here. The whole pinkish area, as you see here, is the area of what is called the Louisiana Purchase. Right? Now, this is what the empress also wrote, right, to Daddy Bush back in the days. One nation cannot make laws in another nation. One nation cannot make laws or nation laws or another nation's laws. One nation cannot steal and sell another nation's ancestral artifacts and property, then flood their sacred places with on indigenous people's land that has always belonged to the ancient ones, which is protected by treaty signed by the protectorate. It is proclaimed that all indigenous sacred sites and grounds shall be returned to the descendants of the ancient inhabitants to ensure preservation. Right? Be it further proclaimed that I now take as the indigenous nation, tribes, communities, and villages with our lands, rivers, and wildlife under the protection of the Empire of Washitaw Deductimunya. And it is further proclaimed that the 13 United States and the United States of the United States of America must make fair and just compensation for the dispossession of the people and the unauthorized occupation of our land, commencing with the first part to be paid, which is 80 quadrillion non-counterfeit USD dollars, right? Every year for 194 years, right? Of course, there's more years than that now. This being the third and final notice of the outstanding debt of the 13 United States, the United States and the United States of America, based on a claim filed that is yet to be settled or relieved, right? So this is reparations that the empress did for us. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation be sent to the governments of the United States and the United States and the United States of America, as well as the governments of the member states of the United Nations and the non-governmental organizations concerned. Therefore, it is now proclaimed in legal session convened this fourth day of the second month of the 19th, 1997th of this common era. Right, as you see, Washitaw, this is what the Emperor's Road, you see a hand right in there, all right, and this in the seal, right? Now, to the right is from the state of Louisiana, in which that they state that they know they do not own portions of the land. Matter of fact, the only thing that was sold actually for the $15 million in gold, which Napoleon never received, was he never received full payment. So therefore, the transaction was never rendered. So the only thing that was really purchased was two barracks and was two streets and a barrack, military barracks. That's what was bought in New Orleans, right? Now, all of Louisiana on up into what is called the Louisiana Purchase, which included those particular states that I just made mention of. No, they never made, they never purchased that. And this is what the Empress was just talking about. Okay. And here's proof from this time period. I'm gonna have to blow it up. Hopefully I can get it back down to size. It was back in the 1990s, around January. And it says basically the families, Eliza Quitman, which is actually Eliza Turner, who is Prophet Noble Drew Ali's mother, allegedly, was one of the various family members in which that won back acres of land during the decision in which that was made during what is called the heirs of Henry Turner versus the United States, right? And this is the actual part of the actual document. I did not get the whole thing. Right? If you want to read this, you can get my book, First World Order. Right? If you want any of this information, all this information is in my book, First World Order. Right? It goes into information much deeper than cry. You know, what was it? What's the name of the book? When Rocks Cry Out. It goes deeper into putting the information together. Good book, but you know, we have to take it a little bit deeper. So here, you can actually see, right? It makes mention about Washitaw in the United States versus the Henry Turner heirs here, right? This is also the grant, in which that includes those various lands in which that was made mention of earlier, previously, even in Europe, all right? Get the book, The Discovery of America, an Outgrowth of the Conquest of the Moors by the Spaniards. Okay, get that book. You need to have that book in your library. And once you read it, then you come back and comment. Then you come back and try to, you know, get at me if I'm wrong, which I'm not. You know, then you can talk. Until then, I wouldn't open my mouth if you haven't read the material. If you haven't read all these books that I made mention of tonight so far, keep your mouth closed. That's what a smart man do. It's only a fool when he open his mouth that we know for sure that he's a fool. Okay? So you gotta make sure that you keep your foolish behind mouth closed. So in 1887, Florentino Amigino discovered apparently man-made heaths, primitive flintstones or tools, carved bones, and a moderate-looking human spinal bone in Pliocene strata 3 to 5 million years old at Monte Hermoso, Argentina. He also made some finds in Miocene in Argentina dating back to 25 million years old. Now, hold up. A moderate looking human spinal bone 3 to 5 million years ago in the Americas, in Argentina, South America, and then another one 5 to 25 million years old. Okay. Between 1894 and 1921, mineralogist and archaeologist William Neven discovered ancient cities in Mexico that dated back to the beginning of the Pleistocene era, which was 2.5 million years ago. Further into the Tertiary era, beneath volcanic ashes, Neven recovered over 2,600 stone tablets, as well as modern human skulls that show Negroid genetic markers. Neven's Jaguaro collection are now in the American Museum of Natural History, which is in New York, and the Peabody Museum of Harvard University. Right? My wife and I have been to the American Museum of Natural History. Okay. Here we also find Virginia Stein McIntyre in 1969, and if I'm not mistaken, she's still alive, and she actually has spoken about this. You can pull it up on YouTube. And this is throughout the United States Geological Survey excavated team led by Virginia Stein McIntyre in 1969. Human habitation was found existing in Mexico for at least 250,000 to 350,000 years ago, based on human artifacts. Human artifacts. So I thought the humans were just coming out of Africa around this time period. What was they doing in Mexico? See, this is the discrepancies that you will have to consider. Right? And it says, based on human artifacts and stone tools tested at the Huyat Tolaco site near the city of Pablo. Shortly after the dating of the site was made public, the head of the Mexican Archaeological Department of the Mexican government became very upset at the ancient dates and ordered the Mexican army to close the site and confiscate all artifacts, and Stein was told to change the dates and take off a zero. So they wanted it to be 25,000 to 35,000 years ago instead of 250,000 to 350,000 years ago. And really, they wanted it to actually take off 2 zeros to be 2,500 to 3,500 years ago. But that would have put them in time with the Olmec being in that area. Because remember, they said that the human artifacts, all right, that was tested, all right, this was Negroid, right, as they refer to it as, right? But it says she stood her ground and jeopardized her career. And that's what happened. So European albino, or Albion, as we refer to him as white, archaeologists such as Josh Reeves, Ross Hamilton, and I know Ross Hamilton personally. My wife and I have gone to the Serpent Mound and actually did a presentation for Ross Hamilton, and actually he allowed for us to walk on top of the Serpent Mound to activate it, and plus took us down to the bottom to a crystal stone that he wanted us to activate, because he said that he believed that there's some type of craft underneath that particular structure. Right or wrong, Queen? You know, so this is what was said. And Jim Verrera, so he says, etc., has already revealed that the first Americans were native, indigenous, black, aboriginal who built ancient mounds, advanced civilization, stone rock sculptures, and indulged in high science of star observation, earth consciousness, nature-based living, cosmological admiration, mathematical copulations, and time reverence, etc. So-called black people in North America are natural descendants of these great spirit walking ancestors. You are what your ancient foreparents were. Right now, this is hard for, once again, this is hard, to understand, but it's not. I gave you the calculations from 2.8 billion years, 600 million years on down to now. Okay? Who has done that for you in the so-called conscious community? They keep regurgitating the same nonsense and don't put the pieces of this puzzle together. That's a problem. Look, even Alex Jones in his recent TV broadcast, he stated that the Black Americans are not African. In other words, they didn't recently just come over 400 years ago on so-called slave ships. They was already here. Even a European Albion is bearing witness to this. Alex Jones bear witness to it. You're the only ones that keep denying it. Because we know that moderate Native American, so-called red man, closely resembles people of China, Korea, and Japan. They're Mongoloids. They're they're from the Mongolians, Chinese. Okay? We know that the Chinese came in droves in 1421. Okay? But the oldest American skeletons do not, say archaeological and paleontologist James Chatham, lead author on the study of the owner of Applied Paleoscience, a research consulting service based in Bothell, Washington. The small number of early American specimens discovered so far has smaller and shorter faces and longer and narrower skulls than the Native Americans, and more closely resemble the moderate people of Africa, Australia, and South Pacific, the same areas that we told you earlier that we descended from. That's why we just can't say Africa by itself. You also have to say Australia and South Pacific is where your ancestry came from. Richard Nave, University of Manchester, England. He shows you Lucia. This dates back 12,500 years ago. More than 6,000 years before the European was on the planet. Okay? These are things in which that DNA companies forget to tell you. Nays further point out that the Aboriginal found in the North Americans resemble what currently would be described as African Americans, as unresolved morphological position between moderate South Pacific and Europeans. All right. Researchers from Spain, Mexico, and Argentina wrote an article which acknowledges that the Paleo Americans did not look like modern American Indians. Sorry. I know y'all might want to get upset if you're American Indian, but that's fine. You are our descendants. You are our children, just like everyone else is on the planet. That's nothing to get upset about. Only reason why you feel like that is because of the racism in which that has been put forth to you in this society. And you see us as so-called blacks being at the bottom of the totem pole here in the Americas and around the world. But before the Europeans came upon this planet, it was just us upon this planet. Okay. It says the Paleo Americans was classified phenotypically as African, Australian, or Malaysian based or multivariate methods and quantitative analysis. This grouping should only be sub-Saharan African and Australian population because the Malaysians or South Sahara Africans share the same cranial matrix measurements. This cranial matrix illustrates that the Paleo Indians belong to the Black variety, but did not allow us to establish conclusively where the Paleo Americans originated. Some researchers believe that the Paleo Americans came from the East Asia across the Bering Strait or from Europe because of the Solitran tool found throughout North America. These points of origination are unlikely because the ice shelf of the northern latitude would have prevented passage from these destinations to South America when the oldest Paleo-American site has been excavated. The most likely place the Paleo-Americans came from was Africa, which is closer to the Americas. So they're saying that the Paleo-Americans, who are the first or the earliest Americans, came from Africa, which is told to you in the book. Present early Africa. Also, they came before Columbus. The first Africans, excuse me, the first Americans, this is Richard Nave, University of Manchester, England. He says this, all right, but we're gonna have three people talking, but this is what he says, all right? He says, to me, this is a Negroid face, and it has all the features that would be associated with a Negroid face. The proportions of the face does not say anything about it being a Mongoloid. This is Dr. Richard Nave. He's a British forensic scientist. So you take up your problem with us being Aboriginal indigenous people with the British forensic scientists in the University of Manchester in England. Take it up with the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company. They say that the Brazilian find shows that the New World was discovered tens of thousands of years earlier than previously believed, certainly well before the time of the American Indian. Prehistoric skulls were found buried in layers of soil in Brazilian caves that are the oldest skulls of America. Lucia belonging to the race found historically along the rim of the Indian Ocean in the islands of South Asia, in East Africa, and in Australia and Malaysia. All places where we can be found to this very day. Then Walter Nave, a Brazilian anthropologist, says this: the first reaction was not to believe in it, but as the results repeated so many times, and the results were exactly the same thing, the skulls are very similar to Australian Aborigines and Africans, and no similarities at all with the Mongoloid in Asia, nor with the American Indians. So once again, you take this up with the British Broadcasting Company, you take this up with the British forensic scientists and University of Manchester in England, and you take this up with the Brazilian anthropologist, Walter Neve. Like, you take this up with them concerning who you are. Okay, that's the problem. Don't come at me, because I'm just going to try to cut your head off, and I might even cut your ass out. Right? So you're going to take it up with the Albions, Europeans that have said that you are the original people here in the Americas. You know, would you go ahead. Yeah. Right. Right. Exactly. Mm, mm. So you might have to say that again, brother L. Right. Unless the I don't know, brother L. The white man could be lying to us again. Right. But he lying to us again. He lied about everything in history. He could be lying to us again, brother L. Right. Yeah, yeah. Uh-oh, 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 uh-oh. I think you just solved that. Right. Oh, oh, oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think he would have to lie about that, would he? You know? I mean, why would he lie about that? That would be very disruptive to his whole ownership of land and us believing that this is actually a de jure government when it's a de facto government. That would be disruptive to his whole thing as far as having control over us, you know, and mind controlling us and so forth and so on, you know. Um, but see, he understands that people, no matter if you tell them the truth or not, they're not and will not bear witness to it. So he don't mind doing that. He'll tell you the truth. Sometimes it might have a little bit of falsehood there, but he'll tell you the truth, you know. So this is Lucia, and they repainted how she might have looked at this time, and of course, looked like a sister, you know. As they said, from Malaysia, Australia, Africa, all right, looks similar to Cicely Tyson, right? The report by Dr. Bert Eli, a biological or biology professor in the University College of Arts and Science, and colleagues at the universities of Massachusetts and Maryland revealed that fewer than 10% of the African American mitochondrial DNA. And this is what it says, that fewer than 10% of the African American mitochondrial DNA sequence that was analyzed can be matched to mitochondrial DNA from one single African ethnic. So we just finished saying that yes, there's African blood, there's also Australian, Aborigine blood, as well as there's also Malaysian, which is Pacific Ireland, Pacific Islander Ireland blood. So this is where we get our genetic makeup from. Okay, get the book. The first Americans were Africans, documented proof by Dr. Imhotep, PhD. You got that book, don't you, brother Al? Okay. Okay, what you think about it? Yeah, tell them a little bit about what you think about it. Why it's a good book, why they should get it in their library. Mm-hmm. Right. 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 Mm. Right. Right. That's right. That's right. Hmm. Well, see, he was trying to stay within the confines of the academia. See, I don't care about that because I'm not working in academia in that particular field as being a professor. So he has to stay within that realm because of his field. Being that I have a doctorate in metaphysics means that I can go any and everywhere with this information. So you know, and a doctorate of metaphysics or a doctorate is equivalent to a PhD, which is a philosopher degree. Especially since I'm in the field of metaphysics, means that first we got to explain the physical before we even get to the metaphysics. So metaphysics, in a sense, encompasses all information, and that's why we try to bring it to you like this because we want you to get a full, um, synopsis, a better summary of what has taken place. This is why we give you the date so that you can start putting together your own timeline. There's another book called by Nasir Ali, which is called The Paleo American, a primer on ancient American history. Another good book, right? And he says this: the Paleo Americans is the first Homo sapiens to inhabit the Americas, predating the Culvers culture. The prefix Paleo means ancient in Greek. Or another way of saying Paleo Americans would be ancient Americans. For over 30 years, scientists have known that the Paleo American predated the Culvers. One of the oldest pre-American ancestors dated back approximately 11,500 years before present. All right. At an archaeological site in Lagoa Santa, Brazil, a female Paleo American remains was uncovered in 1970. 1970 looked like 1973. Let me see. It'd been 1975. Yep, 1975. Being one of the oldest ancient American identity. She is called Lucia Light. Her remains are intact enough such that her face was reconstructed by Dr. Richard Nave from the University of Manchester. All right, so this shows you, okay, proves it. And so Brother L was talking about who was living here 50,000 years ago. Well, by Colonel James Churchward, he explains who was living here. Sculpture tablets recently discovered in Mexico present startling evidence of the prehistoric civilization in the Americas continent founded by colonizers from the lost motherland of Mu in the Pacific Ocean. Right? We just made mention to you who were those people, right? Remember, Black United States Indians and Paleo Americans. It says Paleo Americans is a classification term given to the first people who entered and subsequently inhabited the American continent during the final glacier episodes of the late Pleistocene period. They are known to be Black Polynesians and Australoids. But since those people are generally and by remains phenotype indistinguishable from the Black people still in Africa, it makes African a possible direct source of Paleo-American also. Those people termed Native Americans are later Asian migrants to the Americas, right? This group would include East Asian blacks, such as the Asian and Joman, but perhaps most numerously, the mongrel type people and incredibly European type albinos, right? All right, so we have Man, God, and Civilization, written by, let's go get the book, right? George G. Jackson. In the book, he says, I have seen a statuette of a Negro in the archaeological collection of Mr. Ernesto Franco in Quito. According to the opinion of local archaeologists, been a long day. It says this statuette is at least 20,000 years old, and the autochthonous black races in America was either gradually mixed in with the Indian ones or became extinct. Actually, we did not never come distinct. He himself, George G. Jackson, was of that same lineage, right? There was no such thing as we becoming extinct, all right? It says, but in very remote times, Negro and Negroid were numerous in the New World. Now, this is what he says in his book, Man, God, and Civilization. George G. Jackson ran with Dr. Ben, ran with John Henry Clark. Okay? So nobody was lying to you. They was telling you. You just have to go back and reread the books. There's more than 5 million indigenous Americans present when Columbus arrived. Okay? And we say even higher. Because between North America, Central America, and the adjoining islands and in South America, you talk about more than 90 million so-called more that was already in these areas. Right? Here's another example, name of America. Because they tell you that they named America after Amerigo Vespucci. You see, that's another lie. This is when they start making up shit. See, they can't get too far away from the truth because they got to remember the lie that they told. All right? So, so the most illustrious national name of America was therefore sacred to our people, written in the pictorial writings by a snake crossing a straight line and called Amaru, the great sun, which begins to mean anything sacred at the later period. And when the American went nearer to any of the temples than the law permitted, the police would Amaruak, which means stop, don't do that. But this was the temples of their king, who was also the spiritual chief. And there was the name given to the southern continent, which first appeared in 1541 on the map of Gerard Mercator, a subject of Charles V, by whom he was employed to make charts and a pupil of Erisuus, who he consulted, right? It says one cause of the various ways in which that the ancient name of America was written is that the natives who has no alphabet. Now, how could they write if they didn't have an alphabet, Brother L? You see the technology? The pictogram, right, the pictograms, which is hieroglyphics, were their damn alphabet. Wow, yeah. I mean, that's real sick. So here they are writing, but they had no alphabet. They wrote pictures for ideas, and all the early nations did become the origin of our alphabet. So they didn't have an alphabet, but they was the origin of our alphabet. Wow. which is only an abbreviated form of the original pictures. When the Native American wrote the sacred word Amaru, he drew a line, and so did the Amaru for the name. And this was the sign for or land was America. Okay. So we go further. The illustrious national sacred name of the greatest portion of the southern continent includes the part first discovered by Columbus was America. Okay. Come down. The Spanish colonialists adapted the native name of America to designate that the first settlement on the mainland of the New World. But in those days, the rule of the orthography was undefined, and in addition to the numerous errors in printing, names were spelled in any way which the writer considered most appropriate. And hence we have America not only written as Amaruca, Americo, or America. It says America. Now America is where we get Morocco from, or Morocco. Now Morocco and Morocco becomes Morocco. So Morocco is not the name that you're thinking of in Africa per se, but there is a connective tie between the word Morocco and Morocco, which is America. This is said. All right, here is another book, Ancient America, and it goes down. America is popularly supposed to have received its name from the mariner Amerigo Vespucci. Although Albertico, which is Alberto Vespuccio, son of Anticio Vespuccio, had the Italian immortality by christening the continent after himself, he surely would have honored his family by calling it Vespucia, just as Colombia is named after Christopher Columbus. In Central America, the word America or Americ signifies great mountain, evoking Meru, where we get the name more from. The sacred mountain in the Hindu tradition said to be the center of 7 continents. And ancient America was linked with India through the lost Lemuria. The early voyagers probably believe America to be the native word for the land itself, so they too would use it. Vespuccio's comrades, instead of Albertico, would nickname him Amerigo. So here we go again with these people naming themselves after the land and then mistakenly we teach in history that it came from him. Just like Africa, just like we say, oh, Scipio Africanus, we got the name Africa from Scipio Africanus. That's not true. The term Africa was already utilized, as I showed in the last presentation. The word Afura and Ka was already on the walls of ancient Kemet. And this is according to E.A. Wallace Budge in his Egyptian hieroglyphics book, volume 1. Right, so we have the same thing now with Amerigo Vespucci. Okay, get the book, The Return of the Serpents of Wisdom. You're saying that he's Amaru. He says Aru or Aramu, Muru, the serpent Meru, one of the earliest immortal serpents from Mu to colonize America, was Aramu Maru or Amaru Maru, right? Amaru Maru, the American Moor. That's what that means, American Moor. The serpent Maru, according to legend, moments before Mu final demise, the serpent Maru, along with his consort Arama Mara, boarded an aircraft and headed to South America with a cargo of sacred records and artifacts, including a huge golden sun disk. The mountain of South America, the Andes, resonated with the same yin vibration as their beloved Mu, and were thus considered stable or suitable for the preservation of the Lemurian culture. They were also home of the cities of Palatiti, one of the planetary headquarters of the Solar Brothers and organization of Muru, and has been a high-ranking member of on Mu. Now you go to another section, the serpent colonists of the Americas, right? Not like the way that David Icke is just talking about, but because we mastered the Kundalini energy. So here, being situated between both Atlantis and Lemuria made the Americas both a stepping stone and permanent designation for the serpent colonists traveling from both motherlands. Okay. All right. So it was also a favorite destination for extraterrestrial serpents arriving from Venus and other parts of the cosmos. According to the descendants of the early Lemurian record keepers, the Andes elders, the entire American landmass was anciently known as America, the land of the immortals, or the land of the wise serpents. The title America is derived from the Cursuan Lemurian word Amaru, meaning snake or serpent, right? That's the language of the Incas, and is derived from the runa Sema, the primal tongue spoken on Lemuria, and ends in the syllable ka, which denotes both serpent and wisdom. It also denotes land. Apparently echoing the recollection of the Andy elders, which is Madame Blavatsky, maintains that the secret doctrine, the Americas, is referred to in the Hindu Puranas legends as Patala, the kingdom of the Nagas, serpents. All right. So this is where we're going to end at here tonight, Brother Al. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting tired of talking, tongue tied up in here. All right, Brother L, what you got? Right, right, right. All right, what you got to say before we close out, Brother L? I know you got some good words for him. Indeed. Right. Right, right, right. I hope so. I hope they are listening and hearing what we saying. I mean, we the Nagas, you know what I'm saying? That's just what it is. We the Sagamores, we the Nagas, we all of that and more. Ha ha, you get it? All right, so that's how we want to leave you as we greeted you. And of course, we love y'all. And once again, keep listening for y'all can learn and get this down pat, because the more that you hear it, the more that you can expound on it. All right. So, I mean, you either trapped or you want freedom. It's just that simple. You know what I'm saying? Holy rain, water, little rubber water. Chapter of freedom. Who you want to be? Trapped? Freedom. Who you want to be? Chapter of freedom. The chapter of freedom. Who you want to be? Chapter of freedom. Who you want to be? Yeah. Peace.